Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar on AcoubatBIM by CYPE. I'm Asher, and I'm going to be your presenter today. Now, we're going to get started in a couple of minutes. Just waiting on these last few people to arrive. If you guys could please just confirm with me the audio quality on your end, that'd be great. We'll get started in a couple of minutes from now. Perfect. Okay, great. So let's get started. I think the audio and the video is fine. Perfect. So AcoubatBIM by CYPE. Now, AcoubatBIM is a tool developed by CYPE and also the CSTB, which is the Scientific and Technical Center for Building, with the aid to help users study and analyze the insulation and acoustic conditioning of buildings. And we're going to go through a little bit about the overall workflow that we like to adopt here at CYPE and the BIMserver.center. And then we're going to go through the program, which is AcoubatBIM. We're going to go through an example, and I'm going to be looking at the overall plain view of the workflow in which we would be adopting in our acoustic insulation and conditioning of our buildings that have been developed in our workflow and also outside the workflow as well. We're going to touch on a few of those parameters there. Now, let's get started. What I want to initially do is just go through the workflow. Now, if you've been to a few of the previous webinars and stuff, you'll know that I like to start off with this particular diagram here. Now, I had a bit of a problem opening up the full version of this this image, but that's fine. We can just look at this here. Now, I hope you guys can see what I'm going to be demonstrating here. So initially, we would start off with a physical 3D model. Now, this physical 3D model can be developed in our own native software called IFC Builder, and that basically is a architectural modeler software where we can look at designing our building, our three-dimensional structure, using components, basic components such as walls, columns, etc., etc. We can also define the space types there. So bedrooms, bedroom parameters, etc., etc. for our different spaces within those buildings. Once we have that physical 3D model, we can use the Open BIM synchronization tool, which is application in which allows the connection within the desktop program and the program of AcoubatBIM, for instance, and also the cloud. Now, what I want you guys to just be looking at is this diagram here. Don't worry about this text over here. I've just had some problems opening up this particular diagram. Now, once that physical 3D model is defined and we've synchronized it to the BIMserver.center, that BIMserver.center now, that project now becomes a part of the shared information within the BIMserver.center. So what that basically means is that the model is now inside the server, and other professionals and other project team members and stakeholders are able to use that architectural model to again work on a specific aspect of the project. So for instance, what I'm talking about is these specialized applications. Today we're going through a specific specialized applications, and that's our AcoubatBIM. So our tool developed for the insulation and acoustic conditioning of buildings, of course. But of course, we can have a look in just a moment. These specialized applications range, have a vast range of applications. So we're looking at structural applications, HVAC, plumbing, even Wi-Fi mapping, etc., etc. So in terms of the plethora of different applications we have within our repertoire, it's quite elaborate and basically covers the whole construction side of things. Now, of course, upon defining our models within the specialized applications, we're also able to generate specific documents, and these documents are all will all be attainable within the BIMserver.center. Now, of course, I'm going to go through an example, but I just want to sort of give you guys the overall look of the workflow from a sort of diagram point of view. Now, of course, all our specifications, cost estimating, drawings, schematic diagrams, and all our reports can be generated within these specialized applications and made available online on the BIMserver.center. Now, what this basically means, so what is the overall value of this workflow? There are a few different values that can be translated. So the number one value we have, and sort of the current state of research, etc., is that it actually increases design time. So we can reduce also construction waste, etc., and overruns within the project if we have more time to design for the particular building. And of course, the BIM workflow enables that sort of understanding. When you have professionals or single-man teams working on a particular aspect of a building, and we'll be able to see now, once I go into the BIMserver.center, that we're able to enlist different professionals to configure different aspects of our building. So, for instance, we could enlist an acoustics engineer to define the acoustic parameters and also the envelope within AcoubatBIM. He would then make that available into the shared information, the cloud, and then the project team are able to, in real time, get those updates, obtain those updates, and make relevant decisions based on those models, for instance. And then we'd have, of course, you can imagine the sort of wide range of capabilities that can open up in the real world. Now, of course, if you guys have any questions, I forgot to mention this at the start. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. If you we're going to leave them to the end, but if there's questions that I can answer easily during the presentation, I will do that too. So that's a little bit about the workflow. Let's actually demonstrate this. Let's go into the BIMserver.center. Now, if you guys want to try this software, we're able to do that by just creating an account here. So come over here to login. You can register your own account. So come over here, name, email, you receive a confirmation email. Then once that's done, you can log in. So I'm going to log in now. And here you can see now I'm in my project dashboard. So I'm in my home page. Now, what we can see here, I'm not going to go too much into the BIMserver.center. What I just want to show is the capabilities. With that dashboard, you can see the different projects I'm a part of and also have created, my contacts, my pending collaboration requests, so the requests that I've received to be a part of a project of mine, or the ones I've sent, the downloaded applications I have, some modules and licenses, and also a connection with the social media feed, etc. Let's have a look at some projects. You can see here, by coming over here, let's make this 50. You can see all the different projects that I'm a part of or have created are all available here for my viewing. Now, of course, if I go into one of these, I'll be greeted with the elaborate 3D view, and we can have a look at the project just by simply having an account on BIMserver.center. So for these different stakeholders, etc., they can also view those within the project, within the internet browser, I mean. So here's a few projects. Let's have a look at this project. This is an existing building called the Crown Hall. As we just wait for this to load, you can see the dashboard, the different warnings that have been associated with the project, some recommendations, files, work team, and modification history. So we get a brief overview of the project within the dashboard. Of course, we can see the files and also the latest changes that have been made, and also the work team. Now, what I want to demonstrate is the overall workflow. So let's open this in full screen. You can see here, this is my Crown Hall project. Now, upon clicking this button here, this drop-down selection, you can see all the different models that have been associated with this project. If I go back, you can see these are all the specialized applications that are connected to my physical 3D model, all shared on the BIMserver.center. So all shared on this center. I'm able to look at my architectural model, of course, turn off my structural model, and so this is the architectural model. This is this physical 3D model. Now, of course, I can make this transparent, and then I can start viewing the different models. So my furniture model, my structural model, of course, we had a look, carpentry, suspended ceilings, my lighting, plumbing, water systems, loads, thermal calculation loads, etc., acoustic models, all of them are here if they've been defined previously. Now, of course, this has the added benefit of being able to look at all your work in one particular place, and also the added benefit of what I'm about to get into is the attainment of the files associated with this project. So let's go back. I sort of demonstrated the workflow there. We can go into files here, and this is where I want to demonstrate this particular section, this technical documents section. We can come over to files, and I can view all the files that have been associated with my project. We can have a look. I have the architectural file, all the different models, right? The owner, the changes, the size. I can also go into particular sections, like my structural model, and download the files that have been made available to me by the author. So you can see Vidente here is the author of this structural model. The structural model was generated in CYPE. This is our structural solution, our structural program for the design of concrete and steel reinforcement buildings. And he's also made some files available to me for download. Now, of course, we can have a look again. Let's have a look at our water systems. You can see here all the different files associated with my water systems, carpentry, etc. And you can see here we're also able to generate these documents in multiple different formats. So you can see here PDF format. I'm able to click on that and view the carpentry layout, of course, and the report for a particular carpentry layout, all within the BIMserver.center. And of course, I can download that if I want. I'm not going to do that now. And so that's a little bit about the BIMserver.center. So what this basically means for our acoustic software. Now, our acoustic solutions here, we've of course modeled it with the CSTB. So we've used the CSTB engine to deliver our results within the program. But it's also important to note that within the workflow, it also opens up different possibilities. So we can, of course, model our building to a better degree using, of course, our own architectural modelers. But of course, if for those of you, those acoustic professionals that use different programs, etc., to bring in your workflow when you're working with different professionals, etc., we have solutions for that. So I'm going to head over to the store now. This is the BIMserver.center store. This is where all our applications can be found for download. And you can have a look all our different range of applications. So we can come over here to categories just to get a brief overview. HVAC, 3D design, of course, etc. Fire protection as well. Now I can come over here. What I want to show is 3D design. And you can see here, we're able to, using our plugins here, so our Revit plugin and also our IFC uploader application, we're also able to bring in those architectural models with all the configurations for design, etc., into our IFC workflow. So basically, what this means is we have we have plugins that bring in from a wide range of programs into the workflow as such. So we're able to do that using the Revit plugin, which basically just creates a add-on within the Revit application that we're able to create a IFC model within the program. As you can see here, a little screenshot, Open BIM collaboration, and we can create a project as such. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate that now. You guys will just have to take my word for it. But of course, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is the functionality with different workflows. So different methodologies that we can bring in, different models that we can bring into our workflow and make those and make your project a reality in the BIMserver.center. So Revit, Allplan, ArchiCAD, you name it. We're able to use our tools to bring it into the workflow quite easily. So that's a little bit about the overall background to what we do here. What I'm going to get into now is our AcoubatBIM by CYPE application. Again, for the calculation of insulation and acoustic conditioning within our buildings. So let's bring it over. What I could do is actually demonstrate it from the start. So let's close this. So upon opening the program, we're greeted with the opening section. You can see here my BIMserver.center is connected to my account here. Now, all I'd need to do was just log in with the same credentials that I used to create an account to download the program. I do that here. Password, connect to the BIMserver.center, and you can see here now that's connected. And I also have my BIMserver.center synchronizer connected. So I've got that connection done, and now all my different changes that I'm making to the program, to my model, are updated in live time as well, in real time, sorry. So again, we have the option to create a new project, and upon creating a new project, we're given the option to import a BIM model. So if we have a architectural model in our repertoire, in our profile, in our BIMserver.center, we can import that. And all those different specifications, all those different layouts will be imported in AcoubatBIM, and we can make the relevant changes and amendments to those designs. Of course, we can also use the file managers to import a project. What I'm going to do today, because strictly for time's sake, is actually just go through an example. Now, of course, if you download this, you can have a look at all the different examples that have been provided to us by CYPE. Let's open this office's example. And you can see here we're greeted with the overall project workflow. Now, what I want to initially do is just go through the sort of workflow, the sort of environment, that all our programs sort of follow, the sort of rules that our programs follow. We obviously have a 3D modeler, a 3D viewer in the bottom left-hand corner, where we're able to look at the architectural model. So the architectural model that we've imported here. Of course, within our 3D viewer, we're also able to look at the different elements and toggle on and off the viewing of the different elements within the building, but also the different models that are associated with my BIM model. You can see here I only have two models, my HVAC solution and my architectural model. So I can of course turn off my, so for instance, you can see here my VRF system on the top level. I can come over here and turn off my HVA system, and you can see that that's now gone, so that so I don't deal with viewing of that particular section. Now, of course, we have the BIM Server Center connection here. Now, pressing the update button will update my changes to the project. Exporting the project will export this model into IFC format and save it onto my desktop for later use. And also, you can see here the status with the BIM Server Center, and you can see I'm connected as my profile. Now, let's get started. We have two tabs here, the Model tab and the Analyze tab. Initially, we'd start off with the Model tab, and this is where we define our library of materials and our library and our composition of elements within the project. So, of course, before starting our composition selection, we'd go into general data. Now, general data is where we actually define the rules and regulations, the codes that we want to abide by. Now, don't worry if your country is not here. These are just the codes that we've implemented already into our programs to make things easier for the people in these particular countries. But actually, it's not actually that. It's actually not the case. What we want to do is go into each particular section here and define our design options, basically. And not only design options, but you can see all the different interactions that we need between spaces and also space types as well. We can view those here. So all our acoustic indexes we can define. We have the option to group facades, airborne noises, impact sound insulation, all our different specifications we can define here. And then we go into the types of equipment noise. So we have 3 different types of equipment noise in this example. We have continuous, intermittent, and emergency. We can have a look at those, and we can define those quite easily as well. Now, just bear in mind these options here, because I'm going to go through them in just a second. But you can see here, what I want to demonstrate now is the option to import and export saved specifications of your data. And not just your data, but also your materials, we're going to see in just a moment. So in terms of maximizing time and reducing inefficiencies and project lag as well, you can see the benefits are there. We can actually go into a particular project, and if we have those particular specifications and rules that have been configured prior, we can bring those in automatically. So I can just import, and bam, all our spaces have been defined, all our specifications have been defined. Now, of course, these are the different spaces that have been defined in this project. You can see here my protected spaces and the wide range. So noisy rooms, technical rooms, common areas, sort of different specifications that you would give in a regular building. But of course, we're also expected to amend sound insulation, sound conditioning, and equipment noise within those within those spaces. So here I can define my airborne sound insulation with outdoor noise, adjacent buildings, etc., etc. My sound conditioning, of course, I can look at unfurnished and furnished sound conditioning, where I can define reverberation times and sound absorption areas. I can introduce a threshold value as well for the calculation as well. And also equipment noise. So here I can actually define the type of equipment that will be influenced by this space. The different equipment that the space will be influenced by, and define those values both inside and outside as well. Now, of course, we would be expected to do that for all our different spaces. Now, another thing to remember is that, of course, as I mentioned prior, our architectural modeler does give us the option to define the spaces before. Now, of course, even in Revit, etc., we can do these things, but it's important to note that those spaces get translated into our AcoubatBIM application. So the connection, the interoperability is there. we don't actually have to go and add different spaces every time and then define the parameters of those spaces within our building. That's the sort of efficiency we have here. Now, of course, upon defining those spaces, you can see here I can export and import them as well, as I mentioned prior, and then we would be expected to define all facets of our general data. So also the interaction between space types. So you can see here I can choose a receiver and then choose a source space and define my my values here. Sorry. And we would be expected to do that prior to amending the spaces and also the architectural elements, as I mentioned as well. So that's a little bit about the general data here. So what I want to stress is that even if your code or your method of practice hasn't been inserted here, of course you're able to amend those once, basically only once, unless the project scope changes or the environment in which you're working in changes, and use those same rules and regulations for all your buildings. So for all your models, you're able to have a consistent code of conduct that you abide by. Okay, so that's a little bit about the general data. I'm going to go through these. Of course, we can edit spaces edit multiple spaces at the same time. But again, what I want to do now is look at the building section here. Now, this building section here is where the nitty-gritty of our application comes in. Now, of course, we only have a limited amount of time, so I'm not going to go through exactly what you're expected to do in every single space or facade type, etc. But we can have a look at what we're expected to do. So what we need to do is, of course, define each particular element here, each particular element or space here. So here you can see my office spaces. I can come over here, and again, I'm able to edit those not only prior in the general data, but also here as well in my spaces. So you can see all the different spaces, and also the type of space that the type of rules that space abides by. You can see here my risers have been excluded from the analysis. Again, we'd move on to the facades as well. So here you can see the type of facades that have been highlighted in the 3D modeler. So I can select a particular facade and I can view where that facade is located at. I can also view whether the facade is in use within the project. So of course we could have a multitude of libraries that within the project that haven't been used yet, but they're still, a multitude of elements that are in the project, but they haven't been used yet, but they're still in the library. And you can see here, this defense hasn't been used, but of course it has been defined prior. Now, this brick wall, you can see here, I'm also able to select the base element of that brick wall. You can see here, I'm going to go through this in just a moment, but I can select the base element. I can introduce an internal lining and also an external lining to this brick wall. Now, of course, the real powerful aspect of this program now is the element selection here. And so what we've done in cooperation with CSTB is bring in over, I think it's over 4,000 or over 6,000 different elements, one of the two, into our database, into our application from the database. So you can see here, this is the database, and I'm able to look at and search up particular elements, particular architectural elements. So it's traditional masonry, curtain wall facades, load-bearing walls. This is just for my facade applications, and I'm able to select certain products, view their the specifications, the codes, and also the indexes, so the coefficients indexes of that particular element. Now, you might be asking, what if I have my own element, etc., that I can't find here? I have a specialized supplier that I like to use things there. We're also able to add certain. So we're also able to configure our own specifications here. So you can see here by clicking this creating new product, I'm able to create a product that I have. Now, of course, the program expects you to have all those values and those graphs ready so that you're able to insert a new product and use that in your simulation. So here I'm expected to insert a product name, density, thickness, etc. And here I'm also expected to amend the indexes here as well. Now, upon doing that, I'm able to make it a part of my products that I'm able to use in the application. So here you can see I have a wide range of different products that I'm able to use within the program quite nicely here. I can also filter by brand, so you can see. I'm sure you guys will be able to see a few brands that you guys know here, and filter by a particular brand, and also by particular element as well here. So if I wanted to select this particular partition, I would just accept that change, and that particular partition and that particular element would be defined here. I can also add internal and external layers, as I said. And you can see all the different linings as well. So up to 4,000 elements, a minimum of 4,000 different products that we've inserted into our database, with also the ability to create your own elements, your own specifications. Now that's a little bit about facades. We go into partitions. Of course, these are the different partitions. You can see my partitions have external and internal lining. So we have a single frame partition wall with some cellular foam, both internal and external as well. Then we move on to basement walls. We don't have any basement walls here. My screeds, so my slabs, my bottom slab, you can see a solid concrete, and along with all the different specifications there. The different floor slabs I have, again, I can view those slabs and the location of those slabs within my 3D viewer, and I'm able to select the different elements here. And then my roof, of course, so my concrete roof, you can see here, I've gone into a particular section in my roofing catalog, and I get a nice, I get some diagrams, and also, of course, my indexes are all at my disposal here. Now, what I haven't mentioned is, of course, the attainment of these reports. So again, I can share and export all of them and print them at a click of a button with my project collaborators, etc., and also save them within my files. But we're going to have a look at our reports a bit later. Now, of course, we keep on going. You can see here doors, windows, skylights, all our different elements, our connections as well, that we're able to use quite nicely here. Now, these connections, so these are the edges that have been imported within the program as well. Now, of course, in our IFC builder, our architectural modeler, we have edge processing within the application, so we can actually condense our edges and bring in only the edges that are fundamental to the project, and we can also reduce some as well. Absorbent layers, furniture, so you can see even our furniture that we've defined previously in Open BIM furniture gets imported here. and also the equipment. So the different type of equipment here, you can see I've got my HVAC installation, so mechanical exhaust units, ventilation systems, etc., diffusers, all here. Now then, upon defining all our library, we would go into the use units of our particular of our model. So you can see my ground floor, first floor, second, third, and also unheated sections. And I'm also able to look at particular areas, specifically particular spaces, and how and the description of those spaces. So area, volume. I can also look at indirect airborne transmission within those spaces as well. I can also look at spaces that haven't been assigned a value, so as such my terrace here, and define those here as well. And of course my outdoor equipment all gets imported here. So here you can see the library reference, the hemisphere, and also the option of whether that particular outdoor equipment has been checked. And you can see I've defined my receiver spaces. And you can see here what I mentioned before was that particular HVAC installation there, and being able to view those here as well. Now, of course, we have these different the option to add new use units, etc. But basically, fundamentally, this is the overall workflow. We'd go into the model and define each particular aspect of our building. Then we'd go into analyze. And so here we go into the second phase of a project. And we could, of course, again, define the general data again. That button stays the same. But here we can analyze the project. So what this does is the program will send the specifications to the engine will run the simulation, and we will be able to obtain certain reports and materials, and also the status of how our building behaved under those checks. So let's have a look. Let's click Analyze. This shouldn't take too long. You can see I already have some incidents. I don't have to go back, but they're not crucial, not major incidents. And here we have the analysis summary. So here you can see the type of receiver space, and also the amount of checks that met the requirements and the ones that failed here. So this is just a summary. I can have a look at the acoustic parameters, all of them passed, and again my emission space as well, that I have a analysis check for. So by clicking certain receiver spaces, I'm able to ascertain the type of checks that have been made on those. Now, let's minimize all this. I can come into the results report here, and you can see here, I come into results report, my summarized report, and I'm able to generate a results report on that particular simulation that I just ran. So you can see here by particular zones the checks that have been made and the ones that failed as well. You can see here, for instance, my fifth office on the third floor had a failure in the check against insulation against airborne noise. So I'd have to go back and make amendments to that particular office in order to make amendments to the composition of that particular office in order to check that. That's just a very simplified description of how I could do or how I could satisfy a particular check. Now, of course, I can go into particular areas and look at the check by specific area. Now, of course, I can look at this, my reverberation report. I can have a look at that. And you can see here, I get a results table and a graph as well. Of course, I can export in XLS format and also share and export with my project collaborators quite easily here as well. And the list goes on. So all my all my spaces with different specifications. I'm able to look at reverberation, insulation against airborne noise, and also impact sound pressure levels as well. And you can see here for my hall, they're all checked quite nicely. So the sort of workflow would be to go into the ones that failed. I can also get a report just on the spaces that failed. And have a look at just why those particular checks failed and by how much. And so the benefits there is we get a value, and we get a real value as well. We get a check value, and we can design specifically on that particular value as well at that area. So these are all the checks that failed, and I'm able to, of course, design the reports for those as well. So the last report would be the spaces that only passed the checks. And so we would obviously go into greater detail as to why certain spaces failed, by how much, and we could go back into the model, change particular sections within that area. So for instance, if I came into spaces, I could go into, of course, so if I wanted to change the facades of a particular area, I could increase the thickness or something, or I could increase the thickness of the slab or whatever. Of course, this is up to the professional here as to how he would satisfy the checks as well. So there's a sort of game where we don't want to overcompensate, but again, we want to achieve the checks here as well. Now, of course, not only do we get results reports, but also material properties as well. So here you can see we get a report on all the different materials that have been used in the calculation, in the simulation. And you can see here a large list of all the different specifications here. Now, of course, material properties, but also materials list. So you can see here by particular element, all the different type of material that's been used within the program, within the simulation. And so this is great for connecting with suppliers and consultants, etc. Now, upon doing that, we're able to, of course, look at specific areas and specific checks for those zones. So, of course, you can see all the different zones that I've defined previously, and the ability to look at those zones and how they've behaved in the simulation, and of course, look at and obtain the results for those sections. So you can see here, I get an overall result, but I can also look at the different lateral sections of that calculation as well. And I can get a comparison of the two as well. What I didn't mention prior was something quite important. Let's go back into model. I can come into my acoustic library here. Not that, the selection of base elements, and you can see here I'm able to compare certain things. So let's go into partitions. Let's look at this particular wall. I'm able to, for instance, if I wanted to compare these two walls, I can come over here and select this product to compare, and also come over here and select this product as well that I'm able to compare as well. So here you can see, and for instance, if I wanted to do this one with this one, here you can see I'm able to compare 3 different types of walls in one graph. So I can see how they behaved against each other in a live sort of screenshot. as well. So if I had certain limits that I wanted to achieve here, I'm able to compare different elements from different brands as well, not just the single brand, and also look at sort of the compensation that I'd be able to be afforded if I selected one particular element over the other as well. So here you can see increased design time, but also increased, but with that, the increase of choice, and also choice depending on the certain need that the project has as well. Now, of course, I already mentioned that, but I want to stress it. All our different reports are able to be shared and also exported in a wide range of formats, and also edited within the program as well. So you don't need to use different editing programs, etc., to get a certain screenshot or a certain report completed as such. And that's a little bit about our AcoubatBIM by CYPE. So I'm going to take questions now for the last 10 minutes or so on how, if you guys wanted any clarification on the solution, but this is just a brief example, a brief overview of how a particular project would be implemented or configured within our solution. So what we did was we of course started from our architectural modeler. So that was our IFC builder, we can actually get it up here one moment. Our architectural modeler, and we've now in this presentation looked at the acoustics application in generating our model in the BIMserver.center as well. Now, of course, I tried to demonstrate the ability to create reports within the program, and also those interoperable features within the BIMserver.center as well. Now, of course, what I didn't mention was, of course, the ability to update units to your particular location, so you don't have any problems with that. The ability to change background colors and customize your workflow quite nicely as well within the program. So yeah, any questions for now? I'll be taking those now on the program. We've had one question. Mario asks, good afternoon, Mario. Mario asks if the software is able to calculate acoustic performances of a structural cassette roof system. Now that particular option is done in our model section. So here you can see, I can come over here to roofs, and you can see as well, I'm able to define the roof's base element, and also able to add top lining and bottom lining here. And now, of course, the top lining for a cassette roof system would be the steel sheets, if I'm not mistaken, and also the bottom lining would be some sort of insulation that you'd be able to insert here. And of course, the base element would be the slate of the roofing in that particular system. Now, of course, what also gets some people confused is does the specifications of our roof get imported? So of course, if we had different girders, different sized beams, etc., no, they don't actually get imported from our structural systems, because they don't have to. Actually, it's not pivotal in the calculation for that to happen. So in terms of your question, Mario, thanks for that question. I hope I've answered that to the best of my ability, and you've understood that in terms of defining the roof within the model tab in the roof section here. So you can see here, I just have one roof here, one particular section. It's just plain. So it's quite a simple example, but we want to keep it simple for the sake of not overwhelming you guys as well. Omar Ahmer, hello Omar, how are you? He asks, thank you for your user presentation, no worries. So the next stem of acoustic analysis is importing the 3D model to the AcoubatBIM, then modifying the settings. Consequently, we can get the report accordingly. Yes, correct. So Omar, again, we have our architectural model. You can either create that in our program, IFC Builder, or you can look at all the different other programs that maybe you use in your day-to-day activities, AcoubatBIM, ArchiCAD, Revit, etc., etc. You bring that over into our workflow using those plugins as well as the different applications we have to bring in your architectural model. Then that architectural model gets recognized by this AcoubatBIM by CYPE application, the one we've done. And so this, your model gets read and recognized. And then, of course, you would define all the different specifications that I've gone through in this presentation. And then you'll be able to get your reports accordingly. Now, of course, that's a very simple way to do it. That's a very simplistic explanation. Of course, this takes a lot of time to do to get a. If you want to get a very accurate result, we're looking at quite some time in selecting of the materials, in designing of the spaces, etc. But yeah. That's the sort of workflow that that gets adopted here. And in terms of comparison with different programs in the market, this is by far the most effective, but also the most intuitive for the price as well. So I hope that's answered your questions. Now, Omar, the program, Omar just asked whether the software is available by online or public. Again, we can go into the BIMserver.center. You can come over here. You can search up AcouBat. And you can see here that's available. Now, this is a sort of, we do allow a trial version of the program, but of course, to experience the full potential of the program that we've done, it does require payment, of course. So I hope that's answered your question. You have some time to use it for free if you want to use the trial version, and then of course you would be expected to purchase it if you wanted to later use it, if you're happy with the program, of course. Matthew asks, partitions. If I'm looking at multiple layers, can this handle this? Can I have 2, 3, 4 linings? Now, in terms of this particular option here for our partitions, we don't. We only deal with a maximum of 3, a maximum of 2 linings here. So that's the sort of specification that we have at this moment. Now, of course, we're looking at expanding our sections here and bringing in a large amount of different linings, but also some other things as well that we want to bring in as well. So what we've basically done is just look at the CSTB specifications and the engine there, and define those here as well, Matthew. So in terms of the capabilities for that engine, I'm not exactly too sure how many linings it can take, the sort of varieties we can use, but from what I've spoken to with my colleagues, there is scope for improvement in that particular section with the upcoming versions as well. So just 2 particular linings and also the base element as well. So 3 layers on particular sections. Now, what I want to mention as well, Matthew, is that when you look at particular sections, so if we have a look at, let's go into our roof, for instance, we have our concrete roof, we have this sort of, the layers of, in terms of when we have these, the database of materials, there are some roof types that have already been, that already have multiple layers already considered within them as well. So for instance, if you had, if we go into facades, for instance, and we look at this particular facade, you can see here we get, so we get 2 particular sections here. So we get the 200 millimeter thickness of the stone and also the mortar with 15 millimeters on one side as well. So we can, of course, you can, of course, manipulate the selection of materials as well. But of course, that would be a more specific thing that we'd go into at a later time, and I'd be more than happy to look at if you had particular saved partitions that you wanted to bring in, being able to realize that in the workflow. I'm sure there is a way to do it as well. So I think that's it. I haven't had any other questions, guys. If you have any questions these last couple of minutes, I'll be taking them. If not, I really hope you guys got something out of this presentation. I hope I've done a good job in explaining the workflow and also the sorting capabilities that are that can be realized with the workflow by CYPE, but also the option to look at all the different other applications we have on the BIMserver.center. So I encourage you guys all to go make an account with the BIMserver.center and just explore the type of solutions that we have within our workflow. And I'm sure you can always contact me, or you can contact CYPE support to get better questions, or to get your answers, to get your questions answered, sorry, in regards to those different queries you guys have. All right, guys, we do have a last, perfect. All right, guys, thank you so much for this. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe out there, and yeah, wash your guys' hands. See you later, guys. Bye.